Good to be with all of you this morning. I know I start every lesson that way. It is good to be with all of you, and I'm looking out over our number. I see faces that are very familiar to me, faces of those whom we love and care deeply about. You're with us this morning. We're so glad that you have decided to be here today, and it's an encouragement to me. I can speak for myself. It's an encouragement to me. This morning, we're going to talk about keeping our word. We'll begin in Matthew chapter 5. If you go to Matthew 5 with me, we'll begin in verse 33. We're going to watch what Jesus says about the importance of us, for us to keep our word. Matthew 5 and verse 33. Jesus says, again, you have heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all. Neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes, and your no be no. For whatever is more than these is from the evil one. There's an idea here in this day and age, and Jesus is living in, where people will say, I swear by heaven, or I swear by the earth. And Jesus says, those don't belong to you. How can you swear by something you don't even own? Don't do that. The truth is, just let your word be what it is. Let it be true. Let it be found true by those who hear you. He simply says in verse 37, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. That's a challenge for us. If I were to add something to that, to guarantee that what I'm saying is right, that's not from the Lord, that's from the devil. And that's hard for us to process because sometimes we do. So that the listener understands I'm serious, I'll say, I'll put my car on it. I'll put my truck on it. Now we're talking about a serious matter. That should not be with us, ever. And Jesus is challenging us not to do that with people when we're talking to them. You say, I'm going to do that, and then do it. And if you're not sure that you can, then change what you say. You don't have to tell someone you're going to do something that you know you probably won't be able to do, or that will be difficult for you to accomplish. The right way to handle that is to say, here's what I know. Here's what I can tell you now. There's a lot weighing on this. I'm not sure I can be there, but I'm going to try. Those things are appropriate. And I want to share with you that as I was thinking about lessons for this Sunday and the things that are challenging to us, I had a wonderful conversation with my family on Thursday afternoon. All of my conversations with my family are wonderful. And we were talking about people that we knew in our individual lives who did not keep their word. And I was struck by how everyone responded a little differently talking about that. We know the people by name, people who don't keep their word, and we just get used to that. But our conversation was more specifically in regard to time. So we were talking about people in our lives that would say, I'll be there at 3 o'clock. We'll see you there. Now, I know that all of you are different too about that. Some of you are going to be late. Even though you said, I'll see you at 3, I'll be there at 3, you're going to be late because you're always late. Always. So what do we do when we deal with people like that? We change the time on them. See you there at 2:45. 2:45, I'll be there. And we both know that we'll both be there at 3. Right? Because we had to change the time for you because for some reason it just doesn't work. And I want you to think about this with me. There's a reality in this for us. I'll meet you at 3. Some people don't care how badly it bothers others that they're late. That's not okay. That's not okay. Not if you said you were going to be there. Some people say, if you're 10 minutes early, then you're on time. And I know people who say that, and they stick to it, and they try to make it a rule for the rest of us. If you get there 10 minutes early, then you're on time. And by the way, I can appreciate that take, because what that means is if I leave in order to be there 10 minutes early, then I've given myself room for traffic issues, which aren't a big deal in Austin. Other things that may come up, I just realized I don't have any gas. I've got to swing into the gas station. I got to pick up a prescription before I head that way. This 10-minute cushion gives me time to have a little bit of room to make sure I'm still there by 3 o'clock. But let me say to you, though I can appreciate the rule that some people try to bind on others, I don't do that. I don't do that. The rule is this: keep your word. That's the rule. Whatever you have to do to be there on the time that you said you were going to be there, do it. Because your word is important. It's important to those who you speak to, and more importantly, it's important to God. It's important to your own character and who you are. You're not just somebody who's late all the time. You are somebody who is setting up your character in the way that you're seen by others. And it makes an impression on the world as to who you are and what you say and how valid that actually is. James will tell us the same thing that Jesus did in James chapter 5 and verse 12. James 5 in verse 12, James says this, but above all, imagine this, as he's closing his letter, James says, above all else, my brethren, do not swear, neither by heaven nor by earth, or with any other oath. That's exactly what Jesus told us. But let your yes be yes, and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. So again, Jesus says, if you try to bind anything else to your promise, that's from the evil one. And James says that if you can't just say yes and no, and that mean what you mean it to mean, then you're going to fall into judgment. There's a great challenge here for us. We can't just blow this off. It's not okay to just say things. Your word is binding. And it should matter to you, the words that come out of your mouth. The idle words that we say, those are the things by which we'll be judged, Jesus says to us. And so let's think about this idea of keeping our word in the New Testament passages that talk to us about that. My first passage for you is Colossians chapter 4. If we go to Colossians 4 and watch, again, we're just thinking about this idea of keeping our word, what we say, that it does matter. And most importantly, I want to continue to stress this. It matters to the Lord. Colossians 4, beginning in verse 5. Colossians 4:5. Walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. Lest your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. The Bible tells us here plainly that we should keep our word with strangers and keep our word with people of the world. Walk with wisdom toward those who are outside. And then tied to that, as you've seen this with me, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt. It's a gracious act for me to keep my word when I say something to you and to do my very best to do that. There's a consistency about that, right? Not that I would always be on time. There's things I can't predict. There's things that may come up I just couldn't know about. There are exceptions to that. But the consistency of it is that, man, if he says he's going to be here, he's going to be here. And if he's not, something may have happened. Because he's never late. He thinks highly of his own word, and he keeps his word. It's a gracious act to keep our word to others. What we want when we're dealing with people in the world is we want them to think about us from time to time and to say things like, they really are the salt of the earth. Seasoned with salt. What I say is what I do. And if not, there's a good reason for that. That it would be the exception, not the rule. Because when I say something to you, I'll be there. Or to someone outside in the world, if you'd like to have a Bible study, please let me know. I would love to do that with you. Well, you said it. So when they call you and say, you were talking about Bible study, I got a few questions, can you meet with me? The answer's got to be yes. Yes, 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 yes. We're going to figure this out. I want to have a Bible study with you. Seasoned with salt. We're the salt of the earth. We're the light of the world. And we have opportunity with the things that we say and keeping our word to reveal that light and that truth and that salt, which is a preservative. It's just an interesting picture about what you say should be seasoned with salt. Well, what does salt do? It preserves. Fishermen in the Sea of Galilee knew that if you were going to carry fish out of the Sea of Galilee and carry them up to Jerusalem, you had to cover them in salt because they didn't have refrigeration back then, and the fish would not keep. They wouldn't make it to Jerusalem without salt. So when you season something with salt, it has flavor, yes, but it's also a preservative. You're showing them something about who God is, about your own integrity, and about your character, and it should matter most of all to you. Isn't that interesting that we get kind of into this habit because everybody does it? So we fall into this habit of just saying whatever. It's very easy to say to someone who's standing in front of me and they say, will you come? If I have this little thing, can you come? Will you come? They obviously want me to come. They're asking me if I will or if I can. Now, it's 2 weeks down the road. So in the moment, what do I say? You betcha. I'll be there. You know why? It demands nothing of me now. I get to make them feel better about me showing up to their thing, and I don't even have to think about it for 2 weeks. I'm saying to you, don't do that. Listen to what the request is. Can you be there? Will you do this? Will you help me? Listen to it. Answer it honestly. The answer is not always yes. In high school, I had friends, and it drove me crazy because they promised they would be there, or that they would do something, or they would help me. And I wonder, are we friends? You said yes, and it was in my high school years that I realized that, I know why they're saying yes, because it was 2 weeks away. And it's easy to say yes. And then the person, me, who's begging them to do something, walks away happy. Everybody wins in the moment, except the problem is you were not sure that you would even try to keep your word. And so when the time comes, and it certainly does, and you say, was that today? You've just shown your cards. You've let the world know who you are, that you'll give the quick and easy answer that makes everybody happy, even though you have no intention of keeping your word. It breaks people's trust in you. It breaks it down. It makes you less honorable. It's a problem. It's a problem. And let me just say, I mentioned before, if someone says, look, I swear I'll do it. I swear on my mother's grave. Anytime somebody says something like that to me, I'm already, big time red flags are popping up everywhere. Why do you have to swear so much? If you give me $5, I swear I'll pay you back. How about you just take the $5 and leave me alone? Because people realize that their word's not enough, and so they got to add something to it. That's why that happens. Typically, that's why it develops into more. I swear on my mother's grave. Why would you do that? Why are you bringing her into it? This is between me and you. We can settle this. That is a disgusting behavior, and it upsets me to hear people say that. It's not appropriate. How about you just say yes or no? And before you do, you can use all the time you need to think it through and to be sure that you're right. I thought, as I started this lesson, one of the things I would do when I get up is I would say, on my word, this will be no longer than 25 minutes. And I said, no way, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. You know why? Because I have to keep my word. And then I'd be racing through, which you don't want me to do. 2 Corinthians chapter 9. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 9 with me. I'm also not going to drag it out. You can keep my word on that, or I'll keep my word on that. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, beginning in verse 1. Now just watch this. We're gonna talk about and think about how our word matters. This is something you said. Now you need to do it. Okay, so there's our foundation for this reading. Now concerning the ministering to the saints, it is superfluous for me to write to you, for I know your willingness, about which I boast to you, to the Macedonians, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal has stirred up the majority. Yet I have sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this respect, that as I said, you may be ready. Lest if some Macedonians come with me and find you unprepared, we, not to mention you, should be ashamed of this confident boasting. Therefore I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go to you ahead of time and prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you had previously promised, that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. Keep your word with your brethren. You may notice in verse 5, he says, because you promised. He said, we've been boasting to the brethren in Macedonia and Achaia, and all this emotion and love is stirred up. Everyone's committed to this work because of what you promised. And Paul even says, so just to make sure you don't forget what you promised, I'm sending brethren in advance to help you prepare that which you promised. You see how important it is that they had said, we will do this thing to the Apostle Paul. Brethren within the confines of the church in a universal sense had heard about it. Now, they're encouraged and excited about it. Paul's concerned about this because he says, what if the brethren from Macedonia come and you don't know what they're there for? Or you forgot what you promised? What would that do to brethren across this country, across the land, when they find out that that which you promised was not kept? He's so concerned about it that he's sending brethren in advance to remind them and help them prepare that gift so there's not an issue. You see, now that's someone who's keeping his word. Paul says, we boasted about you. We said you would be ready. Now, because Paul has said it, he's involved. So he says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send brethren ahead of time to make sure you keep your word, because I've said that you will. You see how strong that is in this passage here? That Paul's already boasted about it, and so he wants to make sure that that which he said is true. And he's taking great measures to ensure that it is. How many of us live that way? How many of us live that way? How many of us make a promise to somebody, not going so well today, probably not going to be there, and don't even send a message? Not a big deal. Everybody does it. Yes, it is. We're not everybody. We are members of the Lord's church. There's not very many people in this world that you'll even come in contact with. There's very few that you'll be able to speak to. Very few. In light of how many people there are in this world. What you say to them matters. I'd like to think that when I say to especially a brother or sister in Christ, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be there. And they don't need to know about it, but I will do whatever it takes to make sure they know I meant what I said. I will do whatever it takes. I can't let them down. It means so much to me. And it should mean so much to you. Because again, if you don't come and you don't show up and you don't do what you said you were going to do, then the relationship is damaged. Your word's not valid. It can't be trusted. What will you say to them next? How much weight will it have? Well, you're the judge of that. Let me share this with you, I think, just by way of encouragement, that we don't want to live like the world lives. Let's say in this scenario that you've made a promise to someone, I'm going to be there, I will do it, I'll be there with you. Let's say that it doesn't work out that way, because things do happen. My encouragement to you is to call, to text, to email, and every other way you can possibly reach out to that person and say, I am terribly sorry. This is what I told you I would do, and this is now why I can't. You're still a person of your word. You're still honoring that which you committed to do to the extent that you possibly can. It breaks my heart that I can't be there. I was determined to do it, and now something has come up. I cannot be there. Please forgive me. And if we're strong about this, we will say to them, it won't happen again. You have my word. Keep your word, Paul says, you promised. I saw this word promise in this passage, and I thought, man, I really like that. I like what's being said there and the fact that what we say matters. It matters to brethren. It matters to the world. It matters to God. But if you search the word promise in the New Testament, almost every time we see it, it is speaking of God and what He has said to us. He cannot lie. He keeps His word. He always has, and He always will. If we are to be imitators of God as His dear children, Ephesians 5 and verse 1, then we must keep our word. Always. The word promise, look it up in the New Testament, see how many times it's mentioned and how many times it pertains to God. For He has promised. Our God is faithful. He has promised us. The great and precious promises which God has offered to us, all of it is tied to Him and what He has said. Ephesians 5 and verse 1 says we're His dear children and we're to imitate Him. So let's say that you say to yourself, the points are pretty good. I like it when people keep their word, but I'm not going to do that. You're not imitating God. You're not honoring God with the things that you say. It is that serious. Let me take you to one more place. Let's go to the Old Testament, Proverbs chapter 2, beginning in verse 16. I want to approach this from the other side, if you give me a chance to explain that. Proverbs 2 and verse 16. We're in the middle of discussing the seductress, the adulteress, the harlot. Proverbs 2 and verse 16, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. You see how this pertains to keeping your word? She's an immoral woman. She is a seductress. She is a harlot. She is an adulterer because she's forsaken the companion of her youth. We stand before someone when we step into marriage and we say, I, Danny Simmons, take Karen Lappius, soon to be Simmons, to be my lawfully wedded wife. Forsaking all others. That is powerful language. Forsaking all others except for her. I will honor, cherish, and keep her. What are the words we say in marriage, this covenant that we make? In sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer. I can submit to you it's easier when we're in richness and when we're in health. And not always, sometimes even that causes problems with marriages, but when we're rich and we're healthy, we're happy. That is not the promise. It is only half. For better or for worse. So I can say in the worst moment of my marriage, it's worse. And it could get worse. What's my job? To honor her. To die for her. My word is on it. I was young, and I didn't have it all together when I made that promise. But I said it. That's why we bring in eyewitnesses, family members, to watch it, to observe it, to bear witness to what we've promised to do. Because worse is coming, horror is coming, and we need help sometimes. But she is not a person of her word because she forsook the companion of her youth. She's already broken that off. This speaks to her character, the kind of person she is. Solomon says, don't hang out with her. She didn't even keep her word to the person she claimed to love. Who do you think you are in all of this? Stay away from this woman. At the end of verse 17, she's forgotten the covenant of her God. She is broken and she is worthless in her current state. Do not spend one moment with her. She's broken her covenant with your Creator. She's forgotten the companion of her youth. She is worthless to you. Keep your word to your spouse. By the way, keep your word to your children. Mothers and dads, keep your word to your children. This is another tricky, sticky thing. Because we say things to our kids in a heated moment that we don't mean or can't possibly follow through with. As they get older, they pick up on that and they realize that you're full of malarkey. Or baloney. Or beans. You're full of something, but it ain't the truth. If you do that one more time. How about this one? When I count to 3, your kids are like, why don't you just make it 100? Because it doesn't matter. You can count as much as you want. I already know you. I know your tone. I know when you're serious. I know when you're not serious. And I know that whatever you threaten is not going to come true because you don't have whatever it takes. You don't have what it takes to follow through. And when your kids see that about you and they notice that, then the wall has fallen down. You are not a person of your word. And your kids know it. The challenge for us is to think, am I angry about what my kid just did? Probably. Am I about to blow my top? Probably. What I say next is very important. You do that again, I am going to spank you. I don't want to spank you, but I put it in your hands. It is now up to you. And when they do that again, because that's what kids do, especially boys, they want to know what the boundaries are. So they're going to do it again. Here I come. Here I come. And when all that's over and everyone's done crying, me and you, then we'll sit down and we'll talk about what happened. And I told you, didn't I tell you that this was the end? And you chose it, right? See, that's honoring God. That's honoring my word. God also commands us to do things and says, if you do this, I'll do this. If you do this, then I will do this. And you can rest assured, till the end of time, it will always be true. We're trying to emulate Him. When we say things to our children, we need to do it. It goes on the other side as well. When you say to your kids, if you do this, we'll go get ice cream. Okay, you better be ready. You need to go get ice cream because now kids have incentive and motivation to finally do what you need them to do. Take them to get ice cream. Follow through. Do it right. I think I've shared this with y'all before, but as a child, I often told my grandfather, "You promised." But my grandfather knew that was coming and was far smarter than I was, and he would always say, "Oh, no, I didn't. I said if we had time." Whatever the conditions were, I said that if we could leave at a certain time, we would try to do that, and we've left too late. We can't do that. So he kept his word, even though I tried to trick him into thinking he promised. So that's kids working out what their parents say. Sometimes we have to restate what was actually said, which is why it matters what you say, how you say it, and that you've thought it through. If they're right, they're right. But if they change your wording, that's got to be straightened out. That's all a part of keeping our word. You know, I was talking about spouses keeping their words with their husbands and their wives, and I could talk about the relationship I have with Karen, which I have, and what that means to me. But I want to share something with you that is far, far greater than any example I could give. Karen's mother, Janice Lappius, watched her husband's mind get stolen from Alzheimer's disease, stolen by Alzheimer's disease. She stood by him every step of the way and supported him in the best possible way that she could. That is keeping your word. For richer or for poorer, for better or for worse. That is commitment. That is honoring your word. That is saying something and saying to the congregation or the people who are sitting there with you, you better be listening to me. Because I'm saying something that's going to change the rest of my life. I'm going to need your help. But I will do it. I will do it. No matter what. Karen's mom, we had conversations as that time progressed. She called me and she said, I'm failing my husband. And I would say, how? How? Because he has to go to a caretaker, someone who's big enough and strong enough to pick him up and to help him and to feed him and to do the things that need to be done, to clip his nails. And I said, you have not failed him. You're in another stage of your life where you realize you can't pick him up and you need help doing that. So you've placed him into the hands of someone who can with love and care and dedication. You are still honoring your word. But in those conversations with her, I realized how seriously she took that. That she felt that she was abandoning him because he wasn't with her in each moment of every day. And it's not true. She didn't have what it took to care for him at that point. And she did keep him as long as she could. These are the people that are our examples. Keep your word. Say what you mean. Think it through. And then when you're ready to say, here's what I'll do, man, that's it. And then you become something to the world around you that is far superior to what the world has to offer. Let's go to brother or sister so-and-so. Let's go and see. Let's go and talk to him or to her. They'll steer us straight. They won't lie to us. And if we need their help and they offer it, they will give it. Remember, brothers and sisters, if I don't keep my word, I'm not honoring God. Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no. If there's anyone in our number this morning who needs to repent of the sins they know that they're living in now, the plague of your own sin and the activities of this world that you've seen through, all the foolishness of that, and you want to respond to the gospel, to come to Jesus who is the way, the truth, and the life, you can certainly turn away from those sins, confess His name, be baptized for the remission of your sins, and walk in newness of life, as we read earlier today. We can help you do that. We want to. Come forward while we stand and sing.